The shop bell chimed softly as the merchant pushed open the door, ushering in a young woman who looked as though she would rather be anywhere else in the world. Nathan Barlow glanced up from the waistcoat he was finishing. Needle paused mid-stitch, and felt his professional smile freeze for just a heartbeat before warming into something genuine. The woman was an orc, green-skinned and tusked, with nervous amber eyes that darted around his workroom as though cataloging escape routes. "Master Barlow," the merchant said, a portly human named Gerald Thorne whom Nathan had outfitted twice over the past year. "I hope we are not intruding. I have a rather particular commission." "Never an intrusion, Master Thorne." Nathan set down his work and stood, brushing thread from his apron. "How may I be of service?" Thorne placed a hand on the young woman's shoulder, and she flinched minutely before composing herself. "This is my niece, Petra Stonefield, newly arrived from the Northern Territories. There is to be a gathering in 3 weeks' time, a reception for the Merchants Guild representatives visiting from the capital. I would like her to have a proper gown for the occasion." Nathan saw the way Petra's jaw tightened, the way her hands knotted together in front of her worn travel dress. She was young, perhaps 20, with a build that was athletic without being imposing, her shoulders square but narrow enough to fit any pattern he might draft. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she wore no adornment save a simple leather cord around her wrist. "A gown," Nathan repeated, keeping his tone light and professional. "For a formal reception." "Have you a style in mind, Master Thorne, or shall I suggest something appropriate to the occasion?" "I trust your judgment entirely," Thorne said. "Something that will make a favorable impression. You understand." Nathan understood perfectly. He understood the nervous quality in Thorne's voice, the way Petra's shoulders hunched slightly inward as though she could make herself smaller. He understood that this was not about fashion but about politics, about the delicate dance of proving worth to skeptical eyes. "Of course," he said smoothly. "Miss Stonefield, if you would allow me to take your measurements, I can begin drafting a design this very afternoon." Petra's eyes snapped to his, wide with something between alarm and confusion. Thorne squeezed her shoulder. "I will return in an hour." "Be cooperative, Petra. Master Barlow is the finest tailor in 3 counties." And then the merchant was gone, the bell chiming his departure, leaving Nathan alone with a young woman who looked like a rabbit caught in an open field. "Well then," Nathan said gently, moving to his measuring table to collect his tape and notebook. "Shall we begin? I promise I do not bite, despite what my reputation might suggest." A faint smile tugged at one corner of her mouth, barely visible. "I have heard only good things," she said, her voice soft and carefully measured as though she had practiced each word. "My uncle speaks highly of your work. Your uncle is generous with his praise. Please, step over here into the light." He gestured to the raised platform before the tall mirror, the space where he fitted all his clients. Petra moved like a deer approaching water, cautious and ready to bolt. When she stepped up onto the platform, she stood rigidly, arms at her sides. Nathan studied her for a moment, not the way one might study a curiosity, but the way he studied all his clients, assessing posture, proportion, the way fabric would need to drape and move. She had good shoulders, a narrow waist, and the kind of natural grace that came from physical work rather than dancing lessons. "The gown will need to be something that commands respect without ostentation," he said, circling her slowly, keeping his distance. "A reception for guild representatives calls for elegance and a certain formality. What colors do you favor, Miss Stonefield?" She blinked at him in the mirror. I do not know. I have never owned a gown." "Never." He kept his tone neutral, interested rather than pitying. "What do you usually wear for formal occasions?" "There have not been formal occasions," Not for me. Her hands knotted together again. My uncle says this is important, that I must make a good impression to show that. She trailed off, color rising in her cheeks, a deeper green flush across her nose and the points of her ears. To show that you are civilized, Nathan finished quietly. Yes, I imagine that is what he said. Her eyes met his in the mirror, startled by his directness. He gave her a small, wry smile. Forgive me. I have lived in this town my entire life, Miss Stonefield, and I have dressed enough merchants and guild members to understand how they think. It is not your burden to carry their ignorance, but I understand why your uncle wishes to challenge their assumptions. You are direct, she said, and there was something almost like relief in her voice. A tailor must be, or nothing ever fits properly. Now, to take proper measurements, I will need you to remove your outer dress. You may keep your shift naturally. There is a screen in the corner if you would prefer privacy for the transition. The flush in her cheeks deepened to near crimson, and Nathan realized with a start that she was genuinely mortified. Not uncomfortable in the way most clients were, that minor self-consciousness about standing in undergarments before a relative stranger, but truly, deeply embarrassed. Of course. Yes. She did not move toward the screen. She stood frozen on the platform, her breathing slightly quickened. Nathan set down his measuring tape and turned to face her fully, keeping his voice low and matter-of-fact. Miss Stonefield, Petra, this is a standard part of the process. I cannot draft a pattern that fits properly if I do not have accurate measurements, and your travel dress is too heavy to measure through. You will be perfectly decent in your shift, and I will conduct myself with complete professionalism. You have my word. She swallowed, her throat working visibly. I know, I understand that it is. It is only that no one has ever. That is, I am not accustomed to being treated as though I am a lady who might need measuring for a gown. It feels. She struggled for words, her fingers twisting together. Strange. I am sorry, I am being foolish. You are not being foolish. He moved to the window and adjusted the curtain, softening the afternoon light. You are being human, which is to say, you are having a perfectly normal reaction to an unfamiliar situation. There is no shame in it. Take your time. I have nowhere else to be this afternoon. That seemed to help. She took a breath, then another, and finally moved behind the screen. Nathan turned his back entirely, studying his wall of fabric samples as though they held the secrets of the universe. He heard the rustle of homespun wool, the soft sound of fabric sliding over skin, and then a long pause. I am ready, she said finally, her voice small. He turned. She stood on the platform in a simple linen shift, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes fixed on a point somewhere past his left shoulder. The shift was clean but well mended, the kind of garment made to last through hard use. Her skin, in the softened light, was a warm sage green, darker across her forearms and lighter at her throat. She was trembling very slightly. Thank you, Nathan said quietly, as though she had done him a great favor. This will go quickly, I promise. Stand naturally if you would. Let your arms hang at your sides. He approached with the measuring tape, moving slowly enough that she could track every motion. I will need to take measurements at your shoulders, bust, waist, and hips, and the length from your shoulder to the floor. I will tell you before I touch you, and if at any point you wish me to stop, you have only to say so. She nodded, still not meeting his eyes. Her hands had dropped to her sides, but they were clenched into fists. Nathan had measured hundreds of women in his career, from the mayor's wife to farmhands commissioning wedding dresses. He had perfected the art of making the process as unremarkable as possible, his touch light and impersonal, his manner professional to the point of blandness. He employed all of that skill now, narrating each measurement as he took it, keeping up a steady stream of neutral observations. Shoulder width, 16 inches. I'm thinking a neckline that sits just off the shoulder, perhaps, to draw the eye to your collarbone. You have an excellent frame for a formal gown. Bust measurement. He wrapped the tape around her, his fingers barely brushing the linen, and read the number aloud, jotting it in his notebook without comment. Slowly, incrementally, she began to relax. Her breathing evened out, her hands unclenched. By the time he was measuring from her waist to the floor, she was almost at ease, her eyes following his work with cautious curiosity. "You always talk through everything you do?" she asked as he noted the length of her arm. "Always. It helps my clients feel less like livestock being assessed." He glanced up, catching her eye for just a moment. "Also, I think better aloud. I am already imagining how the fabric will move, where it will need structure, where it should flow." "What are you imagining for me?" There was something tentative in the question, as though she was not certain she had the right to ask. Nathan straightened, tapping his pencil against his notebook. "Something in a deep color. Burgundy, perhaps, or forest green. A fitted bodice with an off-shoulder neckline, as I mentioned. Sleeves that come to the wrist, since we are heading into autumn and the Guildhall is drafty at the best of times. A full skirt, simple and elegant, no excessive decoration. The fabric should speak for itself, and so should you." "Forest green," she murmured, "like camouflage." He huffed a quiet laugh. "If you wish to think of it that way, though I was imagining it more as complementary to your complexion. But yes, a safe choice in hostile territory." Her eyes snapped to his, sharp and searching. "You think it will be hostile?" "I think," Nathan said carefully, "that any gathering meant to prove something to skeptical men is inherently fraught. But you will walk in prepared, well-dressed, and armed with the knowledge that you have done nothing to earn their skepticism. The rest is their failing, not yours." She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, she said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not treating me as though I am made of glass, or as though I am the curiosity they will think I am." Nathan inclined his head. "You are my client, Miss Stonefield. You deserve the same respect and craftsmanship I give to everyone who walks through that door. Now you may dress. I have what I need to begin drafting the pattern. When can you return for a first fitting?" "Whenever you require it." 3 days, then. "I will have the basic structure ready, and we can adjust from there." She disappeared behind the screen again, and Nathan turned to his notebook, sketching quick notes about drape and structure. By the time she emerged, fully dressed and looking far less hunted than when she had arrived, he had the beginnings of a design. 3 days, she repeated, moving toward the door. She hesitated with her hand on the latch, glancing back at him. "Master Barlow, I am grateful for your kindness." "It is not kindness," he said. "It is baseline decency, but you are welcome all the same." After she left, Nathan stood in the empty workroom, tapping his pencil against his lips. Then he moved to his fabric cabinet and began pulling samples, holding them up to the light. "Forest green," he had said. But now he was thinking of something richer, something with depth. He found a bolt of deep emerald silk, heavy enough to drape beautifully with a subtle sheen that would catch candlelight. Yes, this would do. This would more than do. He set up his drafting table and began to draw. 3 days later, Petra returned precisely on time, slipping into the shop just as the church bells finished ringing the hour. Nathan looked up from the cutting table, where he had been trimming the bodice pieces, and smiled. "Miss Stonefield, punctual, a rare and valuable quality. You said 3 days at this time. I did not wish to inconvenience you." She stepped further into the room, her eyes going to the emerald fabric draped across his work form. "That is beautiful. I thought it would suit you better than the forest green. Come see." He gestured her over, and she approached slowly, reaching out to touch the silk with careful fingers. "This must be expensive." "It is. Your uncle has deep pockets and specific requirements. I am meeting both." He picked up the bodice pieces. "The structure is drafted. I need you to try this on so I can pin it properly and see where adjustments are needed. The screen is waiting." This time, she moved behind it without hesitation, and when she emerged in her shift, there was less fear in her eyes. Nathan helped her into the half-constructed bodice, the pieces pinned together at the seams but not yet sewn. He worked quickly, adjusting the fit across her shoulders, pinning the side seams tighter. "How does it feel?" he asked, stepping back to assess his work. "Too tight anywhere?" "Restricting your breathing?" "No, it feels secure." She touched the neckline uncertainly. "This is lower than I expected." "It sits at your collarbone, perfectly modest by formal standards, I assure you. But if you are uncomfortable, I can raise it an inch." She studied herself in the mirror, turning slightly. The bodice followed the lines of her body precisely, fitted but not confining. "No," she said slowly. "No, it is. It is good. I am only unused to seeing myself this way." Nathan pinned the back seam, his fingers quick and practiced. "What way?" "Like someone worth dressing in silk." He paused, pin held between his fingers. In the mirror, their eyes met. "Miss Stonefield," he said quietly, "everyone is worth dressing in silk if they wish it and can afford the fabric. Worth has nothing to do with it. You are my client. You came to me for a gown. I am making you a gown that will serve its purpose and, if I do my job properly, make you feel armed and ready for whatever that reception holds. You speak as though it is a battle. All formal gatherings are in their way. The weapons are simply words and appearance instead of steel." He finished pinning the back and stepped away. "You can remove it now. I will have the bodice sewn by your next appointment, 4 days from now, same time." "Yes." She disappeared behind the screen again, and when she emerged, she hesitated before speaking. "Master Barlow, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you become a tailor?" The question caught him off guard. He set down his pin cushion, considering. "My mother was a seamstress," he said finally. "I grew up in a house full of fabric and thread. When I was 10, she taught me to draft a pattern. I found I had a talent for seeing how cloth could become clothing, for understanding structure and fit. It seemed a natural path." "You enjoy it?" "Immensely. I like solving the puzzle of each client, the challenge of taking measurements and fabric and creating something that transforms how they feel when they wear it. Why do you ask?" She twisted the leather cord on her wrist. "You seem content." "I have not met many people who seem content with their work." "What work do you do, Miss Stonefield? Or did before you came here?" "I helped on my father's farm, planting, harvest, caring for the animals. It was good work, honest work, but—" She trailed off, looking toward the window. "My father thought I might have better prospects here with my uncle. He is a merchant, as you know. He has no children of his own. He offered to teach me the trade, to give me a place in his business. But you are not certain you want it." "I am not certain of anything," she admitted. "This world, your world, it is so different from what I knew. People look at me and see only that I am an orc. They do not see Petra, who can shear a sheep and mend a fence and calculate crop yields. They see a curiosity, or a threat." Nathan wiped chalk dust from his hands, choosing his words carefully. "I cannot promise that will change swiftly. But I can tell you that this town, for all its faults, is more interested in coin and commerce than ancient prejudices. Prove yourself useful to the merchants and they will make room for you, not out of kindness but out of self-interest. It is not ideal, but it is a foothold." "Is that what this gown is meant to do? Give me a foothold, among other things?" He met her gaze steadily. "But more than that, I hope it gives you armor. Something to wear that makes you feel strong enough to walk into a room of skeptical strangers and show them nothing but confidence. A small smile touched her lips. You think highly of your own work, Master Barlow. I do. And I am generally proven right. He returned the smile. 4 days, Miss Stonefield. I will have more to show you then. She left, and Nathan returned to his cutting table, but his mind was elsewhere. He found himself thinking about the way she had stood before the mirror, studying herself as though looking at a stranger. He thought about the carefully controlled fear in her voice when she spoke of the reception, the way she braced herself against judgment she had not yet received, but knew was coming. He had told her the truth. He enjoyed his work. But what he had not said was that the part he enjoyed most was the moment when a client began to see themselves differently. When the right cut and the right fabric combined to create not just a garment, but a kind of shield. He wondered what Petra would look like when she saw herself in the finished gown, whether she would stand straighter, lift her chin higher. He found himself looking forward to it. The 4 days passed quickly. Nathan worked late into the evenings, the bodice taking shape under his hands, the silk responding beautifully to his needle. He lined it with softer cotton, built-in boning for structure, and finished the seams with a perfectionism that bordered on obsessive. When Petra arrived for the next fitting, he had the bodice complete and the skirt pieces cut and waiting. "This is the final shape of the bodice," he said, helping her into it. "The skirt will attach here at the waist. I am still deciding on the fullness. Too much and you will look like a child playing dress-up. Too little and it will not have the formality the occasion requires." "You are the expert," Petra said, but she was watching him in the mirror, her expression thoughtful. "How do you decide?" "By looking at you and listening to what the garment wants to be." He pinned the skirt pieces to the bodice, draping them to see how they fell. "Fashion is a conversation between the wearer and the cloth. My job is to translate. You make it sound like poetry. All crafts are at their best." He adjusted a fold, pinned it, stepped back. "Tell me about your father's farm. What did you grow?" The question seemed to surprise her, but she answered readily enough. "Wheat and barley mostly. Some vegetables for our own use. We had sheep, goats, and a few cows. It was a small holding, but it supported us." "Did you enjoy it?" "Parts of it. I liked the animals. I did not like the loneliness. We were far from any town and other families." She hesitated. "Other families did not often visit, because you are an orc." "Yes." Nathan pinned another section of the skirt, his hands steady. "Tell me, Miss Stonefield, have you always been shy, or did you learn it as a defense?" There was a long silence. When he glanced up, she was staring at him, her amber eyes wide. "That is a very blunt question," she said finally. "I warned you I was direct. You do not have to answer." "No, I think I want to." She took a breath. "I was not always shy. When I was very young, I did not understand yet that I was different. I played with the human children in the nearest village when my father took his goods to market. I chattered and laughed and made friends easily. And then I grew old enough to understand the looks their parents gave me, the way they would call their children away when I approached. I learned to be quiet, to make myself small and unthreatening. It was easier than facing rejection over and over." Nathan's hand stilled on the fabric. "That is heartbreaking." "It is common," she said simply. "Most orcs who live among humans learn the same lesson. Common does not make it less heartbreaking." He finished pinning the skirt and stepped back, assessing the drape. "There. That is the shape I want, full enough for elegance, but not so full you cannot move easily. How does it feel?" "Heavy," she said, "but in a good way, like it has substance." "It should. You are not a wraith. You should not dress like one." He made notes in his book. 2 more fittings should do it. One when the skirt is fully constructed and a final one for any last adjustments. We are on schedule. You sound satisfied. I am. This is coming together well. He glanced at her. Are you prepared for the reception? Beyond the gown, I mean. Do you know what will be expected of you? My uncle has been coaching me. How to greet the guild representatives, what topics are safe to discuss, what to avoid. He says I should speak little and smile often. Nathan frowned. That seems like a waste of your ability to speak coherently. A surprised laugh escaped her, quick and genuine. You disagree with my uncle's strategy. I think your uncle is trying to make you palatable, which is understandable but perhaps not the most effective approach. These men are coming to assess a business arrangement. They want to see competence and reliability, not simpering decorativeness. He helped her out of the pinned gown, his touch careful and professional. But then, I am a tailor, not a merchant. What do I know of negotiation? More than you are admitting, I suspect. She stepped behind the screen to change. You negotiate every time you price a commission, do you not? Fair point. And in my experience, the worst thing you can do in a negotiation is pretend to be something you are not. It shows weakness. She emerged, fully dressed, and stood before him with an expression he could not quite read. Master Barlow, why are you helping me? Beyond the commission, I mean, you speak to me as though you are invested in my success. Nathan considered the question, surprised by its directness. Because I like you, he said simply. You are thoughtful and honest, and you deserve better than to be judged by fools who cannot see past their own prejudices. Also, I dislike injustice, and what you are facing is unjust. Is that answer sufficient? Yes, she said softly. Yes, it is, thank you. After she left, Nathan stood in the workroom, staring at the half-finished gown on his work form. He had told her the truth, but not all of it. The rest of the truth was that he found himself thinking about her more than was strictly professional. He thought about the way she had laughed at his comment about her uncle's strategy, that sudden bright sound. He thought about the careful dignity with which she carried herself, the intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength in the set of her shoulders. He realized with a jolt of surprise, becoming attached. It was a complication he did not need, but there it was all the same. He returned to his work with renewed focus, pushing the thoughts aside. The gown was the thing. Everything else could wait. The next fitting went smoothly. Petra arrived, tried on the nearly completed gown, and stood before the mirror with an expression of dawning wonder. The emerald silk caught the afternoon light, shimmering with every small movement. The bodice fit her perfectly, the off-shoulder neckline elegant without being immodest. The skirt fell in soft, heavy folds to the floor, the kind of drape that spoke of quality and craftsmanship. Master Barlow, she breathed, this is extraordinary. It is adequate, he said, though his voice was warm with satisfaction. The final fitting will be in 5 days. That gives me time to finish the hem and add the closures. Have you shoes appropriate for formal wear? No, I had not thought of it, he sighed. Of course not. You will need evening slippers. There is a cobbler on Market Street, Master Chen. Tell him I sent you, and that you need slippers to match an emerald silk gown. He will know what to make. You are very thorough. I have a reputation to maintain. If you walk into that reception in a perfect gown and farm boots, it reflects poorly on my attention to detail. But he was smiling as he said it, and she smiled back. I will see Master Chen tomorrow. Good. Also, have you given any more thought to what you will say at the reception? Assuming you are called upon to speak, she sobered. My uncle says I will not be asked to speak. That I need only be present and pleasant. Nathan began unpinning the hem, marking it for final stitching. Forgive me for saying so, Miss Stonefield, but your uncle may be underestimating the situation. Guild representatives do not travel from the capital to make small talk. They will have questions, and they may direct some of them to you. if only to test your uncle's confidence in you. What sort of questions? About the business, about trade routes, about market conditions in the Northern Territories. You said you worked on a farm. Do you know anything about commodity prices, crop yields, livestock markets? Of course. That was part of managing the farm. Then you have valuable information. The North is less accessible to capital traders. If you can speak intelligently about conditions there, you become an asset to your uncle's business, not just a niece to be displayed. She was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed. He has not asked me about any of that. He has been teaching me merchant etiquette, how to greet people properly, how to manage a household account book. All useful skills, Nathan said carefully, but perhaps not the only ones you have to offer. You think I should speak up if given the chance. I think you should not hide your intelligence for the sake of appearing harmless. But again, I am a tailor. I deal in fabric, not politics. You must make your own judgment. She studied him in the mirror, her amber eyes sharp. You have opinions that extend well beyond fabric, Master Barlow. Occupational hazard. People talk in my shop. I hear things. I notice patterns. He finished marking the hem and straightened. You can change now. I will have this ready for final fitting in 5 days, as promised. But she did not move toward the screen immediately. Instead, she said, "What patterns have you noticed about the guild representatives who are coming?" Nathan paused. It was a pointed question, and he had to decide how much to tell her. "I have heard," he said slowly, "that they are not universally pleased with your uncle's contract terms. That they feel he is asking too much for northern goods and offering too little in exchange. Is that unusual? Surely all negotiations involve some disagreement about terms. It is not unusual, no, but the intensity of their displeasure may be greater than your uncle realizes." He met her gaze. "I only mention it because I think you should be prepared for the possibility that the reception may be more contentious than you have been led to believe." "How do you know this?" "Because I recently fitted Master Aldrich, one of the guild representatives, for a new coat. And while I worked, he and his associate discussed the upcoming reception. They were not complimentary about your uncle or about the idea of dining with an orc." The color drained slightly from Petra's face. "I see." "I am not telling you this to frighten you," Nathan said quickly. "I am telling you so that you are not blindsided. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say." "What exactly did they say?" Nathan hesitated. This was the moment where he had to decide how much to reveal, and he knew that once he started down this path, there might be no turning back. "They said," he began carefully, "that they hoped the reception would provide an opportunity to demonstrate that your uncle's judgment is compromised. That a man who would bring an orc into his household and business is not fit to negotiate contracts on behalf of the guild." Petra's hands clenched into fists. "They intend to humiliate him, and me." "I believe so, yes, though I do not know the specifics of how they plan to do it. Why are you telling me this? You could have simply made the gown and collected your fee." "Because it is the right thing to do. And because he stopped himself, reformulated, "because I believe you deserve to know what you are walking into." She was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "Thank you, Master Barlow. This information is valuable. I need to think about what to do with it." "Speak to your uncle," Nathan urged. "Tell him what I have told you. He needs to be prepared as well." "I will." She moved behind the screen to change, and when she emerged, her face was set with determination. "I will see you in 5 days for the final fitting." After she left, Nathan felt a weight settle in his chest. He had crossed a line, from tradesman to confidant, from neutral party to someone with a stake in the outcome. He told himself it was simply about fairness, about giving Petra and her uncle a fighting chance against men who would ambush them. But he knew in his bones that it was more than that. It was about Petra herself, about the way she had looked at him when he told her she deserved better than judgment from fools. It was about the sound of her laugh, rare and bright. It was about the fact that somewhere in the process of measuring and pinning and fitting, he had started to care what happened to her. It was a dangerous thing, caring. But there it was all the same. The 5 days passed in a flurry of work. Nathan finished the gown with painstaking care, adding hidden pockets to the skirt, because he thought Petra might appreciate having a place to tuck a handkerchief or a slip of paper. He embroidered a small, subtle pattern along the neckline, a vine of leaves in thread just a shade darker than the silk, visible only in certain lights. It was more work than the commission strictly required, but he found he could not help himself. When Petra arrived for the final fitting, she was not alone. Her uncle accompanied her, and Nathan could see immediately that she had told him everything. Master Thorne's face was grave, his normally jovial demeanor replaced by something harder. "Master Barlow," Thorne said without preamble, "my niece tells me you have information about the guild representative's intentions." "I do," Nathan said, "though I should clarify that it is second-hand information, overheard during a fitting. I cannot guarantee its accuracy. Tell me what you heard." Nathan repeated the conversation he had overheard, leaving nothing out. Thorne listened in silence, his expression darkening with each word. When Nathan finished, the merchant was quiet for a long moment. "I had hoped," Thorne said finally, "that their objections were purely financial. That this was a matter of negotiation, not personal animosity." "I believe the financial objections are real," Nathan said, "but I also believe they intend to use the reception as an opportunity to undermine your position. How exactly I cannot say. Then we must be prepared for anything." Thorne looked at Petra, his expression softening slightly. "My dear, I am sorry to have put you in this position. If I had known—" "You could not have known," Petra said quietly, "and I agreed to come here to join your household. This is part of that choice." "You are braver than I gave you credit for." Thorne squeezed her shoulder. "We will face this together, and we will not give them the satisfaction of seeing us falter." "The gown is ready," Nathan interjected. "Miss Stonefield, if you would like to try it on for your uncle to see." She nodded and disappeared behind the screen. Nathan and Thorne stood in silence, the weight of unspoken concerns filling the room. Then Petra stepped out and both men went still. The gown was everything Nathan had envisioned and more. The emerald silk caught the light like water, the fitted bodice emphasizing her natural grace, the skirt moving with liquid elegance as she walked. The off-shoulder neckline framed her face beautifully, and the subtle embroidery at the neckline added a touch of refinement without ostentation. She looked regal, she looked formidable. "Petra," Thorne said, his voice rough with emotion, "you look like a queen." She turned to the mirror and Nathan watched her face as she took in her own reflection. He saw the moment she realized what he had created, not just a gown, but armor. Something that would make her feel strong no matter what the reception brought. "Master Barlow," she said, her voice thick, I have no words." "Then let the gown speak for you," Nathan said. "When you walk into that reception, you will do so knowing that you are dressed as well as anyone in the room. Better, in fact. Let that confidence carry you." She turned to face him fully, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you for everything. You are most welcome." He cleared his throat, suddenly aware that he was staring. "The fit is perfect. I see no adjustments needed. You can take it with you today if you wish." "Yes," Thorne said. "Yes, we will take it. And Master Barlow, I want to pay you double your usual commission. This work is exceptional, and your discretion and assistance have been invaluable." "That is not necessary. It is to me. Please, Allow me this." Nathan inclined his head, accepting the generosity. "Very well. I will wrap it carefully for transport." As Petra changed back into her regular clothes, Thorne pulled Nathan aside. "I do not know what will happen at the reception," the merchant said quietly, "but I am grateful to you for giving us a chance to prepare, and for treating my niece with the respect she deserves." "She makes it easy," Nathan said honestly. "She is a remarkable young woman, she is, and I hope when this is over she will feel comfortable staying here, building a life." Thorne glanced toward the screen. "She has had too little kindness in her life. It does my heart good to see her receive some." Nathan wrapped the gown in layers of muslin and paper, boxing it carefully. When Petra emerged, he handed it to her with a small bow. "Wear it well, Miss Stonefield, and trust yourself. You are more than capable of handling whatever comes." "I will try," she said. "And Master Barlow, perhaps, after the reception I might visit again, not for a commission but simply to tell you how it went." His heart did a strange, uncomfortable flip in his chest. "I would like that very much." She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. Then she and her uncle were gone, the shop bell chiming behind them, and Nathan was alone with the strange, unsettled feeling that he had just set something in motion that could not be taken back. The week leading up to the reception was torture. Nathan found himself distracted, losing his place in patterns, pricking his fingers with pins. He told himself he was simply concerned for a client, but he knew it was a lie. He was worried about Petra. He wondered if she was nervous, if she was sleeping well, if she had any idea how beautiful she would look in that gown. He also wondered, with growing unease, what exactly the guild representatives were planning. He had told Petra and her uncle everything he knew, but it felt insufficient. There were pieces missing, a pattern he could not quite see. 2 days before the reception, Master Aldrich returned to the shop to collect his finished coat. Nathan greeted him with his usual professional courtesy, helping him into the garment and making final adjustments to the fit. "Excellent work, as always, Master Barlow," Aldrich said, admiring himself in the mirror. "I shall wear this to the guild reception in 2 days' time." "I am sure you will cut a fine figure," Nathan said neutrally, pinning a slight adjustment at the shoulder. "It should be quite the evening," Aldrich continued, his tone casual but his eyes sharp in the mirror. "Master Thorne is hosting, I understand. Quite generous of him, considering the circumstances." "Circumstances, sir?" "Oh, you know, the whole business with his orc niece. Bringing her into his household, parading her before respectable society. Some might call it brave, others might call it foolish." Nathan kept his expression carefully neutral, his fingers steady on the pins. "I could not say, sir. I am not acquainted with the particulars of Master Thorne's household." Of course." Aldrich adjusted his cuffs. "Still, it should prove illuminating. We have prepared a few questions for Master Thorne, tests of judgment, shall we say, to ensure that he is still capable of making sound decisions on behalf of the guild." "I am certain he will acquit himself well," Nathan said mildly. "There, that should do it. The coat is finished." He helped Aldrich out of the coat and wrapped it, taking payment with a polite smile. After the man left, Nathan stood in the empty shop, his mind racing. Tests of judgment. Prepared questions. It sounded like an ambush, carefully planned and coldly executed. He had to warn them, but he had already told them to expect trouble. What more could he say? That the trouble would take the form of pointed questions designed to make Thorne look like a fool. Unless... Nathan closed his shop early and walked to the guild hall, a public building where notices and trade announcements were posted. He had a friend who worked there, a clerk named Marcus, who owed him a favor. He found Marcus at his desk, sorting through a stack of documents. "Nathan," Marcus said, looking up with a smile, What brings you here? Need a permit for something?" "Information," Nathan said quietly, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "The reception Master Thorn is hosting in 2 days. Do you know anything about it? About what the guild representatives are planning?" Marcus's smile faded. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think they are planning to sabotage him, and I want to know how so I can warn him. Please, Marcus, this is important." The clerk hesitated, then sighed. "You did not hear this from me. Understood." "There is a clause in Thorn's contract," Marcus said, lowering his voice. "A provision that allows the guild to void the agreement if they can demonstrate that Thorn is acting against the guild's interests or damaging its reputation. The representatives are planning to invoke that clause at the reception." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that he has brought an orc into his business and household, and that this demonstrates compromised judgment and potential security risks. They have prepared a series of questions designed to force him into either defending his niece, which will make him look biased, or distancing himself from her, which will make him look cruel. Either way, they believe they can make a case for voiding the contract." Nathan's hands clenched into fists. "That is unconscionable." "It is politics," Marcus said wearily. "The contract is lucrative, but it favors Thorn more than the guild would like. They have been looking for an excuse to renegotiate. The niece gave them one. Is there any way to counter it?" "Any defense he can mount. Only if he can demonstrate that his judgment is sound and that his niece is an asset rather than a liability. But given the prejudice against orcs..." Marcus shrugged helplessly. "It is an uphill battle." Nathan thanked him and left the guild hall, his mind churning. He had to get this information to Thorn and Petra, and he had to do it quickly. He walked directly to Thorn's residence, a handsome townhouse near the merchant district, and knocked. A servant answered, and Nathan gave his name and asked to speak with Master Thorn on urgent business. He was shown to a sitting room where he waited, pacing, until Thorn appeared. "Master Barlow," the merchant said, concerned. "What is wrong?" Nathan told him everything Marcus had revealed. Thorn listened, his face growing paler with each word. "They mean to void the contract," Thorn said when Nathan finished. "All of this, the reception, the polite inquiries, it is a pretext for destroying my business." "So it seems. But Marcus said there is a defense. Demonstrate that your judgment is sound and that Petra is an asset. If you can do that publicly and convincingly, they cannot invoke the clause." "How? How can I demonstrate that to men who have already made up their minds?" "I do not know," Nathan admitted, "but Petra is intelligent and knowledgeable. If she can speak to her experience in the Northern Territories, to market conditions and trade opportunities, she becomes more than just a niece. She becomes a business asset, someone who adds value to your operation." Thorn ran a hand through his hair, agitated. "I have been coaching her to be quiet and deferential, to not draw attention to herself. I thought that was the safest path. It may have been, before we knew their plan. Now, it may be exactly what they want. A silent orc they can point to as evidence of your poor judgment." "Then we change tactics." Thorn's jaw set with determination. "I will speak with Petra. We will prepare her to answer questions to demonstrate her knowledge. It is a risk, but it seems we have little choice." "Is she here? May I speak with her as well?" Thorn looked surprised. "You wish to help coach her. I wish to help in any way I can. I have a stake in this now, I suppose. I want to see her succeed." Thorn studied him for a long moment, and Nathan had the uncomfortable feeling that the merchant saw far more than he intended to reveal. Then Thorn smiled, small and knowing. "She is in the library. Come, let us prepare for battle." Petra was seated by the window, reading a book on trade routes. She looked up when they entered, her expression shifting to alarm when she saw Nathan. "Master Barlow, has something happened?" He told her everything, the same information he had given her uncle. She listened without interruption, her face calm but her hands tight on the book. "So they mean to destroy my uncle's business using me as the excuse," she said when he finished. "And the only way to stop them is for me to prove I am worth the risk he took in bringing me here." "Precisely," Thorne said. "Nathan suggests that you speak to your knowledge of the Northern Territories. Answer their questions with confidence and intelligence. Show them that you are an asset to my business." "I can do that," Petra said. "But uncle, are you certain? If I speak and they still reject me, it will be worse than if I had remained silent." "If you remain silent, we have already lost," Thorne said gently. "This way, we at least have a chance. And Nathan is right. You have knowledge that is valuable. Knowledge that I, frankly, do not possess. If we present ourselves as partners in this business, each contributing different expertise, it becomes much harder for them to argue that my judgment is compromised." Nathan pulled a chair close and sat across from Petra. "Tell me what you know about northern markets, crop yields, livestock prices, trade difficulties. Everything." She took a breath and began to speak. For the next 2 hours, Nathan and Thorne questioned her, and Petra answered with growing confidence. She knew yield estimates for northern wheat and barley. She knew the market price of wool and mutton. She knew which trade routes were reliable and which were subject to bandit activity. She knew the political situation between the northern clans and the human settlements, the fragile alliances and old grievances. It was an education for Nathan. He had known she was intelligent, but he had not grasped the depth of her knowledge. She had spent her life on a farm, yes, but it was a farm on the frontier, where survival meant understanding not just agriculture but politics, trade, and security. She was, he realized, exactly the kind of person a savvy merchant would want as a partner. "This is excellent," Thorne said, his voice warm with pride. "Petra, you know far more than I realized. If you can speak even half this well at the reception, we will make them look like fools for doubting us." "I will do my best," Petra said. Then she looked at Nathan. "Thank you, Master Barlow, for warning us, for helping us prepare. You did not have to do any of this." "Yes, I did," Nathan said quietly, "because it is the right thing to do, and because I believe in you." The words hung in the air between them, heavier than he had intended. Petra's eyes widened slightly, her lips parting as though to speak, but no words came. The moment stretched, fragile and full of unspoken things. Thorne cleared his throat. "Well, I think we are as prepared as we can be. Master Barlow, will you attend the reception?" "I would be grateful for a friendly face in the crowd. I am a tailor, not a merchant. I would not normally be invited to such a gathering. You are invited now. As my guest, please, Nathan, it would ease my mind to have you there." Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, I will attend." Petra smiled, and it was like being handed a gift. "I am glad," she said. "I will feel braver knowing you are there." Nathan left the townhouse as the sun was setting, his heart in turmoil. He had crossed so many lines now, from tradesman to confidant to conspirator. And somewhere along the way, he had fallen for Petra Stonefield, this shy orc woman with amber eyes and a mind like a steel trap. It was a complication he could not afford, but there it was all the same. All he could do now was see it through and hope that, when the dust settled, there would still be a chance for something more. The night of the reception arrived cold and clear, the first true bite of autumn in the air. Nathan dressed carefully in his finest coat, the dark blue wool that he had tailored for himself the previous year. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a man on the edge of something significant, though he could not say what. The guild hall was already crowded when he arrived, merchants and their families mingling in their formal best. Nathan accepted a glass of wine from a passing servant and positioned himself near the wall, watching. He spotted the guild representatives immediately. Aldrich and his associate, a thin man named Garrett, both dressed in expensive tailored coats and wearing expressions of cold satisfaction. Then Thorn arrived, and the crowd parted slightly to allow him entry. He was smiling, gracious, playing the role of genial host, and on his arm, dressed in emerald silk that shimmered like dragon scales, was Petra. The room went silent. Every eye turned to her, and Nathan saw the moment she realized the weight of their collective gaze. She faltered, just slightly, her step hitching. But then she lifted her chin, squared her shoulders, and walked forward with the kind of quiet dignity that could not be taught. She was magnificent. Nathan saw the exact moment when several of the merchants reassessed their assumptions. Saw the way their eyes widened as they took in the gown, the way it fit her, the way she carried herself. This was not a barbarian playing dress-up. This was a woman of substance, dressed to match her worth. Aldrich's expression soured. Garrett whispered something in his ear, and Aldrich nodded, his jaw tight. The reception proceeded according to the usual customs. Toasts were made, food was served, conversations ebbed and flowed. Nathan kept to the periphery, watching Petra as she navigated the room on her uncle's arm. She spoke when spoken to, her answers polite and measured. She did not smile often, but when she did, it was genuine, and then, inevitably, Aldrich made his move. "Master Thorn," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "might I have a word? There are some questions about the contract I would like to clarify." "Of course," Thorn said smoothly. "Here or in private, here, I think. Transparency is important in such matters, do you not agree?" It was a trap, and everyone in the room knew it. Conversations died. People turned to watch. Thorn inclined his head. "As you wish." Aldrich smiled, and it was not kind. "Excellent. Now, I have been reviewing the terms of our agreement, and I confess I have some concerns. Specifically, concerns about the security of our trade routes through the northern territories. Bandit activity has been increasing, has it not?" "It has," Thorn agreed. "Which is why I have been working to establish better relationships with the northern clans. They control much of that territory, and their cooperation is essential to safe passage." "The northern clans," Garrett said, stepping forward. "You mean the orc clans?" The word hung in the air like a blade. Thorn did not flinch. "Yes, the orc clans who control the northern passes and valleys. They are the key to securing the trade routes." "And you believe you can negotiate with them?" Aldrich asked. "Savages who have raided human settlements for generations." "I believe," Thorn said evenly, "that most conflicts arise from misunderstanding and lack of communication. The clans have legitimate grievances about trade practices that have excluded them. Address those grievances, and cooperation becomes possible." "A noble sentiment," Garrett said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But surely you must see the risk in such an approach. How can we trust your judgment in these negotiations when you have so clearly compromised yourself?" There it was. The accusation laid bare. Thorn's expression hardened. "I am not certain what you are implying, Master Garrett." "I am implying," Garrett said, "that a man who brings an orc into his household and business may not be capable of negotiating impartially with other orcs. That personal attachments may cloud professional judgment." The room was utterly silent. Petra stood beside her uncle, her face pale but her spine straight. Nathan felt his heart pounding in his chest, his hands clenched around his wine glass. "My niece," Thorn said, his voice like iron, "is a member of my family. She is also a valuable asset to my business, with knowledge and connections I do not possess." To suggest that her presence compromises my judgment is to fundamentally misunderstand the nature of our partnership. Partnership, Aldrich repeated, seizing on the word. So you admit that you view her as a business partner, an orc with no training in trade or commerce as your partner. I have training, Petra said quietly. Every head swiveled toward her. Aldrich blinked as though a piece of furniture had spoken. I beg your pardon. I said I have training, Petra repeated, her voice stronger now. Perhaps not in formal trade or commerce, but in the practicalities of northern markets. I have spent my entire life in the borderlands. I know crop yields, livestock values, trade routes, and clan politics. I know which passes are safe and which are controlled by bandits. I know which clan leaders are open to negotiation and which are not. That is the knowledge I bring to my uncle's business. That is the value I add. Garrett's eyes narrowed. And we are simply meant to take your word for this. You are meant to test it, Petra said. She stepped forward away from her uncle and Nathan's breath caught. Ask me anything about the Northern Territories, market conditions, trade opportunities, political alliances. If I cannot answer, then you are correct. I am a liability. But if I can, then perhaps you should reconsider your assumptions. The room erupted in whispers. Aldrich looked furious, but he was also trapped. If he refused to question her, he looked afraid. If he questioned her and she answered well, he lost. Very well, he said tightly. What is the current market price of northern wool? It depends on the quality and the clan, Petra said without hesitation. Fine wool from the Highland clans, the kind used for winter coats, currently trades at 12 silver per bolt in the border markets. Coarser wool, suitable for blankets and common wear, trades at 6 silver. But those are border prices. If you can negotiate directly with the clans and eliminate the middlemen, you can acquire it for 8 and 4 respectively, then resell at a significant profit. Aldrich's jaw tightened. And which clans control the Highland pastures? The Ironhorn and Stonefist clans primarily. The Ironhorn are more open to trade with humans, provided the terms are fair. The Stonefist are more isolationist, but their chieftain's daughter recently married into the Ironhorn, which may open new opportunities for negotiation. Nathan watched Aldrich's face cycle through emotions, surprise, irritation, and finally grudging respect. Garrett tried next. What about grain shipments? The Northern Territories are not known for abundant harvests. How can we rely on consistent supply? You cannot, if you are looking for large-scale grain exports, Petra said bluntly. The northern growing season is short, and most of what is produced goes to feeding the local population. However, the clans do produce surplus barley, which is hardier and grows well in poor soil. If you are looking to supply brewers and distillers, northern barley is an untapped market. Current production is around 1,500 bushels annually, but with investment in better seed and equipment, that could double within 3 years. She was not guessing. She was not hedging. She was stating facts with the confidence of someone who had lived them. Nathan saw the shift in the room, the way the other merchants were leaning in, suddenly interested. This was not an orc curiosity. This was someone with actual, valuable information. Aldrich made one last attempt. And how do we know these clans will honor any agreements? What stops them from taking our gold and closing the passes anyway? Honor, Petra said simply. Clan honor is taken very seriously. A chieftain who breaks a sworn agreement loses the respect of the other clans and risks being deposed. That is why the terms of any agreement must be carefully worded and witnessed by neutral parties. But once sworn, a clan agreement is more reliable than most human contracts I have seen. There was a ripple of laughter at that, and Aldrich's face went red. He opened his mouth to respond, but Thorne stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Petra's shoulder. "I believe my niece has demonstrated her value," he said. "She brings knowledge and connections that I, as a lowland merchant, do not possess. Together, we can open trade routes and markets that have been closed to the guild for generations. That is not compromised judgment, gentlemen. That is good business." The room was quiet for a moment, and then one of the other merchants, a woman named Helena Marks whom Nathan had fitted for riding habits, began to clap. Slowly, others joined in. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to make it clear that Aldrich and Garrett had lost. Aldrich's face was a mask of fury. "This is not over," he said quietly. "We will review the contract terms and submit our assessment to the guild council." "As is your right," Thorne said pleasantly, "and I look forward to their decision. Now, if you will excuse me, I believe there is still food and wine to enjoy." "Please, everyone, continue." The crowd dispersed, conversations resuming with increased energy. Nathan saw several merchants approach Thorne and Petra, asking questions about northern trade. He saw Petra answer them with growing confidence, her initial shyness burned away by the necessity of defending herself. He stayed on the periphery, content to watch. She did not need him now. She had found her footing. But then she looked up, her eyes scanning the room, and when they found him, she smiled. It was a small smile, private, meant only for him. And Nathan felt something settle in his chest, a rightness he had not known he was looking for. The reception continued for another hour before people began to depart. Nathan waited until the crowd had thinned, then approached Thorne and Petra. The merchant looked exhausted but triumphant. Petra looked drained but quietly proud. "Master Barlow," Thorne said, clasping his hand. "Thank you for coming. Your support meant a great deal." "I did nothing but stand and watch," Nathan said. "Petra did all the work." "You did more than you know," Petra said quietly. "Having you here, knowing you believed in me, it helped." There was something in her eyes, something warm and open, and Nathan felt his heart stutter. "You were extraordinary," he said. "I knew you were intelligent, but watching you face down those men, answer their questions without fear, it was remarkable." "I was terrified," she admitted. "But I remembered what you said, that I was dressed as well as anyone in the room and that confidence would carry me. So I wore the gown like armor and I pretended I was not afraid." "You did more than pretend," Thorne said. "You were magnificent. I have never been more proud." Petra's eyes shone with unshed tears, and she hugged her uncle tightly. Nathan looked away, giving them a moment of privacy. When they separated, Thorne cleared his throat. "I must make the rounds, thank our guests properly. Petra, will you be all right for a few minutes?" "Of course, uncle. Go." Thorne departed, leaving Nathan and Petra standing together in a quiet corner of the hall. The musicians were packing up their instruments and servants were beginning to clear away dishes. The evening was ending. "Walk with me," Petra asked. "Just for a moment, I need air." They stepped out onto the guild hall's terrace, a small balcony overlooking the town square. The night was cold and Petra shivered. Without thinking, Nathan shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. "Thank you," she murmured, pulling it close. "For everything. The gown, the warnings, the preparation. I could not have done this without you." "Yes, you could have," Nathan said. "You are stronger than you realize, perhaps, but it was easier knowing you were there." She turned to face him fully, and in the moonlight her eyes were luminous. "Nathan, there is something I need to say." His heart was pounding now, so loud he was certain she could hear it. "What is it?" "When I first came to your shop, I was terrified, not just of the measurements, but of everything. Of this new life, of trying to fit into a world that did not want me. You treated me with kindness and respect, and you made me feel seen, not as an orc or a curiosity, but as a person, as Petra. And somewhere in all those fittings and conversations She trailed off, biting her lip. "You what?" Nathan asked, his voice hoarse. "I fell for you," she said simply. "I know it is foolish. I know you are human and I am an orc, and the world will not look kindly on such a pairing, but I needed you to know. Even if nothing can come of it, I needed to say it aloud." Nathan stood frozen, his mind racing. He should be cautious. He should consider the implications, the social consequences, the complications. But all he could think about was the way she had looked at him across the shop, the sound of her laugh, the quiet strength in her voice as she had faced down Aldrich's accusations. "It is not foolish," he said. "And for what it is worth, I fell for you somewhere around the second fitting when you asked me why I became a tailor and actually listened to the answer." Her eyes widened. You feel the same." "Yes." He reached out, tentative, and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, and he rubbed his thumb across her knuckles, warming them. "I know there will be obstacles. I know people will talk. But Petra, if tonight taught me anything, it is that you are brave enough to face down any challenge. And I would very much like to face them with you if you will have me." She laughed, a bright, disbelieving sound. "If I will have you, Nathan, I have been hoping you would say something like this for weeks. Then allow me to be perfectly clear." He stepped closer, still holding her hand. "Petra Stonefield, I am courting you, officially, intentionally, and with every intention of making this something permanent if you are willing." "I am willing," she said, her voice thick with emotion. So very willing. He wanted to kiss her. The impulse was overwhelming. But they were in public, on a terrace where anyone could see, and he did not want their first kiss to be tainted by scandal. So instead, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a promise of more to come. "We should go inside," he said reluctantly, "before we cause a scandal." "Too late," she said, smiling. "We have been causing a scandal since the moment I walked into your shop. Fair point. But let us not add fuel to the fire just yet." They returned to the hall, and Nathan saw Thorn watching them with a knowing smile. The merchant said nothing, but when Nathan met his eyes, Thorn gave him a small nod of approval. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Nathan eventually took his leave, walking home through the quiet streets with his heart singing. He had come to the reception to support Petra, and he was leaving with the beginnings of a future he had not dared to imagine. The days following the reception were a strange mix of normalcy and transformation. Nathan returned to his work, fitting clients and drafting patterns, but his mind was never far from Petra. They exchanged letters, brief notes delivered by servants, in which they shared thoughts too private for conversation. Nathan learned that she loved poetry, that she had a wry sense of humor, that she worried about being a burden to her uncle. He wrote back assuring her that she was no such thing, that her uncle clearly adored her, and that she had proven her worth a dozen times over. He told her about his work, about the peculiarities of his clients, about the satisfactions of a well-fitted garment. And in every letter, he found new ways to say what he had said on the terrace, that he cared for her, that he wanted a future with her. 2 weeks after the reception, Thorn sent word that the Guild Council had reviewed the contract and upheld it, rejecting Aldrich's objections. The northern trade route was secure, and Petra's role in the business was officially recognized. It was a victory, complete and unambiguous. To celebrate, Thorn hosted a second gathering, smaller and more intimate than the reception. He invited only those merchants who had supported him, along with a few personal friends, and he asked Nathan to attend. "This is a celebration of new beginnings," Thorn wrote in the invitation. "And you are very much a part of that." The gathering was held at Thorn's townhouse, in the garden despite the autumn chill. Lanterns hung from the trees, and a small group of musicians played soft, cheerful tunes. Food and wine were abundant, and the atmosphere was warm and relaxed. Petra was there, of course, wearing the emerald gown again. She looked radiant, her earlier shyness replaced by a quiet confidence. When she saw Nathan, her face lit up, and she excused herself from the conversation she was having to cross the garden to him. "You came," she said, taking his hands. "I would not miss it." He looked her over, smiling. "The gown suits you as well tonight as it did the first time." "I think I will wear it until it falls apart," she said. "It feels like luck, like armor, like a promise all at once." "A promise of what?" "Of who I can be when I am brave enough." They stood together, hands clasped, until Thorne approached. "Master Barlow," he said warmly, "I am so glad you could join us. Petra, my dear, might I borrow you for a moment? There is someone I would like you to meet." Petra glanced at Nathan, and he nodded. "Go, I will be here." She squeezed his hands and followed her uncle. Nathan wandered the garden, making polite conversation with the other guests, but his attention kept returning to Petra. She moved through the crowd with grace, speaking and laughing, and he marveled at the transformation. This was the woman she had always been, he realized. He had simply helped her see it. As the evening wore on, the musicians struck up a waltz, and couples began to dance on the small terrace. Nathan watched, content, until he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Petra standing there, her hand extended. "Will you dance with me?" she asked. "I am a barely competent dancer," he warned. "I may step on your feet." "I will risk it." He took her hand and led her onto the terrace. The waltz was slow and simple, and Nathan managed to keep time without embarrassing himself too badly. Petra was light on her feet, easy to lead, and she smiled up at him with such warmth that he forgot to be self-conscious. "This is perfect," she said as they turned. "This night, this moment. I did not know I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Nathan admitted. "But here we are. Here we are." She rested her head against his shoulder for just a moment, and Nathan felt his heart swell. They danced through the rest of the song, and when it ended, they stood together, reluctant to let go. "Nathan," Petra said softly, "I know we have only been courting for a short time, and I know there are still obstacles ahead, but I want you to know that I am certain, about you, about us. I have never been more certain of anything." "Neither have I," he said. "Petra, I love you. I know it is soon to say it, but it is true. I love you, and I want to build a life with you." Her eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I love you too, so much it frightens me sometimes." "Then let us be frightened together." He kissed her then, there on the terrace under the lanterns, with the music playing softly and the autumn night cool around them. It was a gentle kiss, tentative and sweet, and it tasted like new beginnings. When they pulled apart, Petra was laughing and crying at the same time. "We are causing a scene," she said, glancing around at the other guests, some of whom were watching with interest. "Let them watch," Nathan said. "Let them see that we are happy. That is scandal enough." They danced again and then again, until the musicians packed up and the guests began to depart. Thorne approached them as the evening wound down, his expression fond. "I take it the two of you have an understanding," he said. "We do," Nathan said, his arm around Petra's waist. "I hope that meets with your approval, sir." "It does, more than you know. Petra deserves happiness, and I believe you will give it to her," Thorne smiled. "But if you hurt her, I will ensure that you never work as a tailor in this town again." "Uncle," Petra exclaimed, horrified. "I am joking." "Mostly." Thorne kissed her forehead. "Be happy, my dear, you have earned it." As the last of the guests departed, Nathan walked Petra through the garden, unwilling to say goodnight. They talked about everything and nothing, their future and their pasts, their hopes and their fears. And when Nathan finally left, walking home through the quiet streets, he felt as though he was walking on air. Over the following months, their courtship deepened. Nathan visited Petra regularly at her uncle's townhouse, and she visited his shop, sitting in the corner and reading while he worked. They walked through the town together, ate meals together, and slowly built a life that fit them both. There were challenges, of course. Some people in the town looked askance at their relationship, whispering behind hands. But enough people respected Nathan, and enough had been impressed by Petra at the reception, that the whispers never turned to outright hostility. And those who did object found that neither Nathan nor Petra cared much for their opinions. Thorne's business flourished with Petra's help. The northern trade routes opened, and the guild profited handsomely. Petra proved herself an invaluable partner, negotiating with the clans and managing the logistics of shipments. She was no longer just Thorne's niece. She was Thorne's business partner, respected in her own right. And through it all, Nathan and Petra's love grew. They learned each other's rhythms, their quirks and habits. Nathan learned that Petra hummed when she was content, that she loved the smell of fresh bread, that she cried during thunderstorms because they reminded her of her childhood. Petra learned that Nathan talked to himself when he was drafting patterns, that he had a weakness for honey cakes, that he was fiercely protective of the people he loved. A year after the reception, Nathan asked Petra to marry him. He did it simply in his workroom, surrounded by fabric and thread. He had no grand speech prepared, no elaborate plan. He simply took her hand and said, "Petra, I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" She said yes before he had even finished the question. They were married in the spring in a small ceremony at the town chapel. Thorne gave Petra away, tears streaming down his face. Nathan's mother, who had come from her retirement in the countryside, wept openly. The guests were few but heartfelt, people who genuinely cared for the couple and wished them well. Petra wore the emerald gown, altered slightly to suit the occasion. Nathan wore a new coat, dark green to match, that he had sewn himself. They spoke their vows in steady voices, promising love and loyalty, and when the officiant pronounced them married, the small chapel erupted in applause. The celebration afterward was held in Thorne's garden, which had become a place of significance for them. They ate and drank and danced, and Nathan thought he had never seen Petra look so radiant, so utterly, completely happy. As the sun set and the lanterns were lit, Nathan pulled Petra aside, leading her to a quiet corner of the garden. "Happy?" he asked, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she said. "I keep thinking I will wake up and find this was all a dream." "It is not a dream. This is real and it is ours." She kissed him, soft and lingering, and Nathan felt the truth of his own words. This was real. This was theirs. They had built it together out of silk and trust and quiet bravery. "I love you," Petra said. "My husband." "I love you," Nathan replied. "My wife." They stood together as the stars began to appear, the sound of celebration drifting over from the terrace. And Nathan thought about the day Petra had first walked into his shop, shy and frightened, and how far they had come since then. He thought about the gown he had made her, the armor she had worn into battle. And he thought about all the things he would make for her in the years to come. Clothes and comfort, a home and a family, a life woven together with care and precision. It was, he decided, the finest commission he had ever undertaken, and he intended to spend the rest of his life perfecting it. Years later, sitting in the garden of the house they had bought together, watching their daughter Ilara chase fireflies in the gathering dusk, Nathan would remember that night. He would remember the way Petra had looked in the emerald gown, the way she had stood before a room of skeptics and proven herself. He would remember the first time she had smiled at him, the first time she had said she loved him, the first time he had held her as his wife. And he would think, not for the first time, how lucky he was. How a simple commission to make a gown had become the beginning of everything that mattered. Petra would catch him smiling and ask what he was thinking about, and he would pull her close and say, just remembering how it all began. With a shy orc woman who blushed when I asked her to undress. She would laugh and swat his shoulder, but she would be smiling too, remembering. Because it was their story and it was real and it was theirs, and that, Nathan thought, was more than enough.